What's going on, my planting people? 5 months ago, I decided to propagate my very large Monstera Deliciosa. Now, this is the plant I got in my very early stages of houseplant collecting. Of course, you have to get a Monstera Deliciosa, right? It is the staple houseplant, that cheese plant. It gives you that real tropical vibe. And I think, a lot of collections, people would say, isn't complete without a Monstera Deliciosa. So let's estimate that I've had this plant coming on to about 2 years, maybe 2.5, even maybe close to 3 years. I remember getting this plant as a very small plant, and I think, interestingly, I actually bought this plant from Amazon. I don't think I've bought many plants from Amazon. This fiddle leaf fig and that Monstera Deliciosa were the only plants that I've got from Amazon. And yeah, both of them are doing pretty well. And I kind of just left the plant as it was. I've upsized it, I've put it into a bigger pot, and the plant is just one of those plants that it doesn't give me any concern, it doesn't give me any headaches, it doesn't keep me up at night at all, because this plant is a set it and forget it plant. It is quite a rapid grower, so buyers be warned, if you want to get this plant and you don't have one, just know that it's a very fast grower, so make sure that you have the space to care for this plant. I know that because I used to have this plant in this space here in my living room, and it started to grow and grow, and eventually sort of just outgrew the space, which isn't that big. As you can see, there's not much space here. This is probably a 2 meter by 2 meter space that I've crammed a whole load of plants in, and it started to grow very quickly and started to spread out its leaves. So I put the plant upstairs and I put it into my sister's room. And to be fair, this plant is actually quite far away from an east facing window, but that doesn't stop it. The plant grew prolifically. Like, it grew so large, so well, that eventually I was like, I need to chop this plant up. And that's what I did. So I made that video of me propagating that plant and taking off, like just giving it a complete makeover, a complete haircut, and I chopped it up and I took several nodes. I can't quite remember how many nodes that I took, but I took quite a few. And I decided to try propagating this plant in a few different ways. I say a few, 2 ways. My philosophy here was less is more, right? And try to make this as seamless as possible. I don't want to overcomplicate propagation, because honestly, propagation isn't as hard as some others make it out to be. It can be quite easy to do, and that was the purpose of that video. So I used the 2 methods, the first one being water propagation and the other one being soil propagation, and not any special soil. I literally took the plant and I popped it into the exact same pot that the mother plant was in, covered it up with a little bit of soil, not much, set it and forget it, and that was my philosophy. So let's look at the plants today and see how they are looking now. Do you remember the water propagated plants? This is it now. This thing has done super well. Yes, all of them had leaves on them, and I want to say that every single cutting has actually produced a leaf. And look at that, look at those roots, super well rooted, just living its life. We even had some longer, bigger roots in there, and every single one of them is doing super well. So this is where the plant has been living. It's been living on my kitchen table. Just in this corner, we have a west facing window over there, so it does get plenty of light. And if I take you in for a closer look, we can explore the roots and exactly what's been happening with this plant. So look at that, look at all of those roots. Just incredible, super well rooted, super well. Look at that, look how dense that is, and that is looking amazing. We have a new leaf here. I actually was concerned that this leaf may not emerge fully because it was kind of getting strangled by some of the roots down here. So I'm glad to see that it's actually popped up out of the surface, which is nice to see. And as I said, there are loads and loads of new leaves. So this is one of the new leaves from a different node, as is this one and this one back here. And we also have some larger ones, like for example, this is a new leaf and that is fenestrated, so that's really good. That's always a good sign of maturity. And we have another one back here as well. Look at that. So some really good growth on this plant. I've actually had to plant tie all of the plants together, otherwise they just start to sprawl out and spread out, and you need to be able to contain it a little bit. My no fuss philosophy continues, because even the care for this, I haven't really done much. Most of the time I'll just top up the water when I've noticed that it's come below that water line there. So where you can see my finger is just there, that's kind of the level that I keep that water at. Not for any particular reason, mainly just because some of the roots are actually above that water line. So just to make sure that all of the roots have access to that moisture, I will do that. Most of the time I'll just top it up with plain old tap water, and some of the time if I have water with fertilizer in my spray canister when I go around spraying my plants, I'll throw some of that in there as well, just so that the plants have something to feed from. That might be why some of the leaves have actually grown and got that fenestration on there. But honestly, it doesn't get any more complicated than that. Super easy to propagate these plants. Now the next big thing is, what the hell am I going to do with these plants? The one plant on its own kind of quickly outgrew my space, and then to add these ones to the mix as well is going to be interesting. So I don't know, I'm just going to keep it on the table for now, keep growing it in this water until I figure out exactly what I want to do with these plants. So that was the very first propagation method. Let's pop upstairs and have a look at the soil propagated cuttings and see how they're doing. So here we are, this is the mother plant, and on first glance you might think, okay, there's not much going on, but let's take a closer look on the inside. So getting in close, remember this plant was absolutely massive. It was kind of up to sort of here with new growth, and it was just way too unruly and hard to sort of care for. But first, let's look at where we made our propagation cuttings. So here we go. So you can see here we made a cut in here and a cut here as well, and one back here as well. So it probably wasn't that many cuts as I had remembered, but you can see that every single stem that was cut has a new growth point and has actually developed leaves. So for example, this one here, if we follow that up, this is the first leaf that it produced, followed by this leaf. So this is a nice step up. And look at this one. This is probably one of the main stems, one of the larger ones. We follow that up, it produced this sort of funky, wonky looking leaf. But since then, it's produced a lovely larger leaf like this, as well as a new leaf on the way. So that's quite good to see. And we have this other stem over here. If we follow that up, a much larger stem actually, we can see that with a nice aerial root coming in there. We have first leaf was this big beautiful leaf, followed by this one with a fenestration. So that's really great to see. But that's not what we're here for. We want to see what those propagations look like. And although most of them are covered up, we can see that here we have one that's actually produced a new leaf. So that one is definitely rooted in. We have another one with another leaf. This is the leaf of the second cutting. So that one has come in nicely. This leaf over here, I don't know why, but I think I've broken this by pushing the plant back a bit too far, but that's okay because the leaf is still alive. The actual main leaf is still okay. So that's looking really good. Coming to the other side, we can see that we have some more rootage here, and we can be confident in that because look, we have a couple of new leaves that have emerged. And even just here, this is probably the last one to emerge. Look at that, it has a new growth point. I think the verdict is that all of these in the soil have rooted. My experience is that it has taken longer, but all of the leaves are slightly smaller than the water propagation. But I think it's still fine. It's still absolutely fine. That was a little bit complicated to show, so I hope you could see all of the plants that I was showing you in the soil propagation. But in effect, I just wanted to show you that all of those plants have rooted, not a single one has failed, and every single one of them has started to produce a new leaf. In hindsight, probably the soil propagation was slightly less fuss than the water one. Like the water one, you had to sort of top up the water, which isn't hard work. You just throw some water in there. But the soil propagation one, I probably water that Monstera in the height of summer, maybe once a week. At the moment, it's probably once every 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm really not as fussy with this plant. Again, I've just stuck it there and I've forgotten about it. That plant is a lot further away from a light source than the other one on the table is as well. And still it has produced leaves. So probably that soil propagation one has been a bit more successful if you're looking at it in the detail than the other one, but that other one was just as easy. Stick it in a window and it will do fine. I'm sure if I could get that other Monstera closer to a window, it will probably be similar to the one on the table, maybe even better. And I guess the other thing you have to is if I had to transplant the water propagation into soil, there's a potential of there being a sort of a shock to the system, because it's going from one type of substrate to another, whereas the other one is already in soil, so there's going to be no transplant shock. So that's the other thing to consider. But in either case, both of them have worked really, really well. What I do need your help on though is thinking about, what am I going to do with these plants? Am I going to take these and replant it into that same pot? Am I just gonna, I don't know, try to find another home for them in this plant? Should I just give it away? I'm open to all of those suggestions, so let me know in the comments below. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.